Welcome to another quiet step into the heart of the night. Tonight's story drifts in through corridors lit by flickering candles, where polished mirrors catch whispers and hold them in their silver depths. It carries the scent of oud and rose water, the hush of silk brushing stone, and the watchful gaze of reflections that never truly sleep. Here, light and shadow walk together. Time moves like water in a covered fountain, and every mirrored face has a story. It will only tell in the dark. Let the glow find you. Let the stillness listen with you. And if these quiet wanderings bring you comfort, you might consider subscribing or telling us where and when you're listening from. Now, close your eyes and let the mirrors guide you through the Ottoman night. The corridor stretches before her like a river of shadow and gold, its walls draped in velvet so deep it seems to swallow the flickering light of oil lamps. She moves through this passage with the quiet grace of one who has walked these halls countless times before, her bare feet making no sound against the cool marble that has been worn smooth by generations of silent steps. In her hands she carries 2 mirrors, polished silver that catches the amber glow of the lamps and throws it back in gentle, dancing patterns against the rich fabric of the walls. The mirrors are not large, each no bigger than her palm, but they are perfectly crafted. The silver backing catches every nuance of light, every shadow, every movement with a clarity that seems almost alive. Their frames are delicate works of art, intricate patterns of gold and mother of pearl that spiral and curve like written prayers, like the breath of sleeping flowers. As she walks, these mirrors capture fragments of the world around her, a lamp's flame wavering in a draught, the soft curves of carved wooden screens, the gentle sway of silk curtains that divide one chamber from another. Her name is whispered sometimes in the halls, but never spoken aloud in her presence. She exists in the spaces between words, between glances, carrying her mirrors through the labyrinthine passages of the imperial harem, like a keeper of forgotten moments. The other women know her by the soft sound of her approach, the whisper of silk against marble, the almost inaudible chime of metal against metal, when the mirror's frames touch as she adjusts her grip. Tonight, as every night, she begins her journey at the eastern end of the great corridor, where the walls are painted with scenes of gardens that seem to breathe in the lamplight. The painted leaves flutter without wind. The painted birds seem to turn their heads as she passes. In her mirrors, these images fracture and multiply, 1,000 painted roses blooming in silver, a flock of golden birds taking flight in reflection. She moves slowly, deliberately, allowing each step to carry her deeper into the quiet rhythm of her nightly rounds. The air here is heavy with the scent of roses and jasmine perfumes that have soaked into the very stones over decades of use. Braziers burn low in alcoves, sending tendrils of sandalwood smoke curling toward the vaulted ceiling high above. The smoke moves like thoughts made visible, like prayers ascending, and in her mirrors she can see it dancing, ghostly, shapes that appear and vanish as she shifts her angle of view. As she passes the first of the great chambers, she can hear the soft murmur of voices within. Women speaking in hushed tones about dreams they have dreamed, about fabrics they will weave tomorrow, about melodies that have been haunting them like beautiful ghosts. She does not pause to listen to the words, but the sound of their voices becomes part of the tapestry of the night, weaving itself into the rhythm of her steps. The gentle breathing of the lamps, the distant sound of water flowing in hidden fountains. The mirrors in her hands seem to grow warmer as she walks, as if they are drawing heat from her palms, from the air itself, from the very life that flows through these corridors. They reflect not just the visible world, but something deeper, the essence of the night, the peace that settles over the harem like a silk veil. In their silver depths, she can see the curved architecture of the passages stretching ahead of her, doorways that lead to chambers filled with sleeping women, windows that look out onto moonlit courtyards where fountains sing their eternal songs. She pauses at one such window, holding the mirrors so that they capture the view beyond, a garden where orange trees grow in perfect rows, their leaves silver in the moonlight, their branches heavy with fruit that gleams like small lanterns. The air that drifts through the carved stone lattice carries the scent of these oranges, mixed with the night-blooming jasmine that climbs the garden walls. In her mirrors, this garden becomes infinite, reflected and re-reflected, until it seems she holds in her hands entire worlds of moonlight and shadow, perfume and silence. The women she serves exist in chambers beyond chamber, in rooms that connect to other rooms, in patterns that would confuse a stranger, but are as familiar to her as her own breathing. Some of these women she has known for years, their faces as familiar to her as the reflection in her own mirrors. Others are new, brought to the harem with eyes still wide with wonder at the luxury that surrounds them, at the silk and gold and marble that will become their daily world. She knows them not by their spoken words, for she rarely speaks and is rarely spoken to directly, but by their reflections. In the mirrors she carries, she has seen them in unguarded moments. The proud beauty who stands tall during the day, but curls into herself when she thinks no one is watching. The young woman from the mountains who still dreams of snow and wakes with tears on her cheeks. The scholar who reads by lamplight until her eyes grow heavy, her fingers still tracing words in the air as she drifts toward sleep. These glimpses come to her without intent, without invasion of privacy. The mirrors simply show what they see, and she has learned to be a faithful keeper of these moments, holding them in her memory as gently as she holds the mirrors themselves. She understands that her role is not to observe, but to facilitate observation, to bring the mirrors to where they are needed, to polish them until they shine with perfect clarity, to carry them through the night like prayers made visible. The corridor she walks now curves gently to the left, following the contours of the great building that houses the harem. The walls here are covered in tiles of deep blue and gold, patterns that flow like water, like music made visual. The tiles are cool to the touch, and sometimes she pauses to press her free hand against them, feeling their smooth surface, their slight coolness that provides relief from the warm air that circulates through these passages. As she rounds this curve, she can see ahead of her one of the great reception chambers where the women gather during the day to practice their music, to embroider silk with threads of gold and silver, to tell stories that have been passed down through generations. The chamber is empty now, but the mirrors in her hands catch glimpses of its beauty. Low divans covered in brocade, instruments resting in their stands, tapestries that tell stories of distant lands and ancient heroes. The lamps in this chamber burn lower than those in the corridor, creating pools of warm light separated by gentle shadows. She moves through these pools of light like a fish moving through water, her silk robes stirring the air, the mirrors in her hands capturing each zone of illumination and turning it into something magical. The light seems to follow her, to bend, power around her, as if she carries her own luminescence. In the silence of the chamber, she can hear the distant sound of the Bosphorus, the gentle lapping of waves against stone, the occasional call of night birds, the soft whisper of wind through the gardens that surround the palace. These sounds seem to emanate from the mirrors themselves, as if the silver surfaces have absorbed not just light but sound, not just images but the very essence of the place they reflect. She passes through chamber after chamber, each one a variation on the theme of luxury and comfort that defines the harem. Rooms with fountains that create gentle music as water falls from level to level. Chambers where the air is heavy with the scent of roses that have been scattered on the floors. Spaces where silk curtains create intimate alcoves, where women can retreat into privacy while still being part of the larger community. In one chamber, she pauses longer than usual. Here, the walls are covered in mirrors, not hand mirrors like the ones she carries, but great expanses, full of polished silver that reflect the entire room, creating an infinite recession of space and light. When she holds up her own mirrors in this chamber, the reflections multiply beyond counting. She sees herself from angles she has never seen before, her image fragmenting and reforming in patterns that are both beautiful and somehow otherworldly. But more than her own reflection, she sees the echoes of all who have passed through this chamber. The mirrors hold memory, and in their depths she can glimpse the shadows of women who have stood here before. Generations of women who have looked into these same silver surfaces, who have seen their own beauty reflected back at them, who have used these mirrors to prepare themselves for presentations, for celebrations, for quiet moments of self-contemplation. The mirrors she carries seem to vibrate in her hands, as if responding to the presence of their larger cousins. The silver grows warm, almost alive, and for a moment she feels as if she is holding not just polished metal, but captured light, crystallized time, fragments of the eternal made tangible. She stands in this chamber of mirrors for long minutes, watching the play of reflection upon reflection, feeling herself become part of something larger than her individual existence. When she finally moves on, leaving the mirror chamber behind, she carries with her a sense of expansion, as if the experience has somehow enlarged her understanding of her role. of her place in this world of silk and shadow. The mirrors in her hands feel different now, not just tools, but companions, not just objects, but partners in her nightly journey through the harem's corridors. The next section of her route takes her past the chambers, where the youngest women sleep. These rooms are smaller, more intimate, decorated with patterns that suggest spring gardens and morning light. The air here carries different scents, lighter perfumes, the fragrance of orange blossoms, the clean smell of recently washed silk. The lamps burn with a softer light, creating an atmosphere of gentle protection, of nurturing care. As she passes these chambers, she can hear the soft sounds of sleep, the gentle breathing of young women who have found peace in this place, who have made the transition from their old lives to this new existence within the imperial household. Some murmur in their sleep, speaking words and languages she recognizes but does not understand, calling out names from lives they have left behind. Others sleep in perfect silence, their rest so deep that they seem to have become part of the very stillness that pervades these halls. The mirrors catch glimpses of these sleeping forms through partially opened doorways, the curve of a shoulder beneath silk covers, the fall of dark hair across a pillow, hands that rest in positions of complete relaxation. These images appear in the silver surfaces for just moments before shifting and changing as she moves. As the angle of reflection changes, as the lamplight flickers and creates new patterns of shadow and illumination, she understands that she is witnessing something sacred in these moments. The vulnerability of sleep, the trust that these women place in this sanctuary that has become their home. The mirrors she carries become vessels for this trust, holding these images with the same care that she holds the memories of her own quiet existence within these walls. As she continues her journey, the corridor opens into a larger space, a kind of interior courtyard, where the ceiling rises high above and windows. Near the top allow moonlight to filter down in silver streams. The floor here is inlaid with patterns of marble and precious stones, creating mandalas of color that seem to pulse with their own inner light. A fountain occupies the center of this space, its water catching the moonlight and throwing it back in patterns that dance across the walls. She approaches the fountain slowly, her bare feet now treading on cool stone that has been polished to a mirror-like smoothness. The water in the fountain moves in gentle cascades, each level creating its own music, its own rhythm that harmonizes with the overall song of falling water. She holds her mirrors so that they capture the fountain's reflection, and suddenly the silver surfaces become windows into an aquatic world. Water that seems to flow upward as well as downward. Light that moves like liquid through liquid light. The sound of the water seems to enter the mirrors themselves, so that when she moves away from the fountain, she carries with her not just the visual memory of flowing water, but its voice as well. The mirrors hum softly in her hands, a vibration so subtle it might be imagination. But she has learned to trust these subtle communications from the objects she tends. Beyond the fountain courtyard, her path leads into a section of the harem that is used for more formal purposes, chambers where important visitors are received, where ceremonies take place, where the hierarchy of the harem expresses itself in ritual and protocol. These rooms are grander than the living spaces, with higher ceilings, more elaborate decorations, furniture that speaks of power and position as much as comfort and beauty. The mirrors she carries reflect this grandeur, but they also reveal the essential emptiness of these spaces when they are not occupied. Without the presence of people, the richest decorations become merely objects. The most beautiful spaces become simply containers waiting to be filled. She moves through these grand chambers like a ghost carrying ghosts, her mirrors holding the essence of ceremony and formality, while she herself remains part of the invisible infrastructure that makes such ceremonies possible. In one of these formal chambers, she encounters another figure, one of the senior women of the harem, someone who moves through these spaces with authority and purpose. This woman does not acknowledge her directly, but there is a moment when their paths cross, when the older woman pauses in her own journey to glance toward the mirrors that catch and throw back the lamplight. In that glance, she sees recognition, not of herself as an individual, but of her function, her role in the ecosystem of the harem. The senior woman's eyes rest for a moment on the mirrors, as if she too understands that these silver surfaces hold more than simple reflections, that they are repositories of memory, witnesses to the daily life that flows through these corridors like water through carefully constructed channels. The moment passes without words, as such moments always do in her experience. The senior woman continues on her path, and she continues on hers. But something has been exchanged, an acknowledgement of shared understanding, a recognition that they are both servants of the same larger purpose, keepers of the same fragile beauty that defines life within these walls. As she moves deeper into the night, deeper into her journey through the harem's corridors, the quality of light begins to change. The lamps burn lower, their oil consumed by hours of gentle flame. The shadows grow longer, deeper, more complex in their patterns. The air itself seems to thicken, as if the accumulated perfumes and incense of the day are settling into the very atmosphere of the place. Her mirrors reflect this changing light, these deepening shadows, but they also seem to generate their own illumination. The silver surfaces glow with a soft radiance that appears to come from within, as if they have absorbed not just the visible light of the lamps, but some essential luminescence that exists beyond the ordinary spectrum of perception. She passes through a corridor lined with small alcoves, each containing a single lamp and a small carpet where someone might kneel in prayer or meditation. These alcoves are intimate spaces, designed for solitude and reflection, and as she passes each one, her mirrors catch glimpses of their sacred geometry. The way the light from each lamp creates a perfect, pure circle of illumination. The way the shadows fall in patterns that suggest depth and mystery. In one alcove, she sees evidence of recent use, a prayer rug still bearing the impression of someone who has knelt upon it, a lamp whose flame burns more brightly than the others, as if it has recently been tended. She pauses here for a moment, holding her mirrors so that they reflect this intimate space, understanding that she is witnessing the aftermath of a private communion. A moment when one of the harem's inhabitants has sought connection with something larger than the material luxury that surrounds them. The mirrors seem to understand the sanctity of this moment. Their surfaces become perfectly still, reflecting the alcove with a clarity that transcends ordinary reflection. For an instant, she feels as if she is looking not at a physical space, but at the essence of prayer itself, the crystallized intention of someone seeking peace, seeking understanding, seeking connection with the divine that exists both within and beyond the confines of these earthly corridors. When she moves on from the alcove, she carries this sense of sanctity with her. The mirrors in her hands feel heavier now, not with physical weight, but with the weight of accumulated meaning, accumulated purpose. She understands that her nightly journey is more than simply a practical task. It is a form of pilgrimage, a walking meditation that connects her to every corner of the world she inhabits, to every person who shares this space with her. The corridor she follows now leads toward the western end of the harem, where the chambers face toward the city, toward the great dome and minarets that rise from the heart of Istanbul. Through windows placed high in the walls, she can see the distant glow of the city's lights, the reflection of moon and stars on the waters of the Golden Horn, the gentle pulse of life that continues beyond these walls, even in the depths of night. Her mirrors catch fragments of this distant view, stars that appear as points of silver light in the polished surfaces. The glow of the city that paints the mirrors with subtle variations of gold and amber. She realizes that she carries not just reflections of the harem's interior world, but glimpses of the larger world beyond. That her mirrors serve as bridges between the intimate space of the harem and the vast complexity of the empire that surrounds it. As she nears the western end of her route, she encounters chambers that are used for different purposes than those she has passed before. Here are the rooms where fabrics are stored, silks and brocades, cotton and linen, materials dyed in every color imaginable. The air in these chambers is filled with the scent of fabric, the accumulated essence of countless threads, the subtle perfumes that cling to silk that has been worn against perfumed skin. Her mirrors reflect the textures of these fabrics, but more than that, they seem to capture the potential that exists within them. In the silver surfaces, she can see glimpses of the garments these fabrics will become, the ceremonies they will adorn, the moments of beauty they will help create. The mirrors hold not just what is, but what might be, not just the present moment, but the unfolding future that grows from it. She moves through chambers filled with musical instruments, lyres and flutes, drums and small bells, instruments from regions throughout the empire and beyond. Even in their silence, these instruments seem to vibrate with potential music, and her mirrors catch glimpses of this silent song. The silver surfaces seem to hum with melodies that exist only in possibility, rhythms that wait to be awakened by skilled hands, harmonies that sleep within carved wood and stretched hide. In another chamber, she finds the tools of beauty, cosmetics and perfumes, brushes and combs made from precious materials, mirrors and jewelry that catch and throw back the lamplight in patterns of rainbow fire. Here, her own mirrors seem to find their kindred, reflecting the reflection of reflections, creating cascades of silver light that fill the chamber with gentle radiance. As she stands among these tools of beauty, holding her own mirrors, she experiences a moment of perfect integration. She sees herself as part of a larger system of reflection and beauty, a network of surfaces and lights that work together to create the particular magic that defines life within the harem. Her mirrors are not separate from this world, but integral to it. Essential components in a complex machine designed to create and maintain beauty, to reflect and enhance the natural loveliness that exists within every person who dwells within these walls. The realization brings with it a deep sense of peace, an understanding that her role, however quiet and unnoticed, is necessary and meaningful. She is not simply carrying mirrors through corridors. She is participating in the maintenance of beauty itself, helping to sustain a world where reflection and self-awareness, where contemplation and appreciation of loveliness can flourish, protected from the harsher realities that exist beyond these walls. As she continues her journey, moving now through corridors that lead toward the chambers where she will eventually complete her nightly rounds, she notices that the quality of silence has changed. The deeper silence of late night has settled over the harem, a quiet so complete that it seems to have weight and texture of its own. In this silence, every small sound becomes magnified. The whisper of her silk robes against her body, the almost inaudible sound of air moving through the corridors, the distant murmur of water in hidden fountains. Her mirrors reflect this silence as much as they reflect light and image. The silver surfaces seem to absorb sound, to hold it within their depths alongside the visual memories they contain. She realizes that she is carrying not just mirrors, but vessels of accumulated experience, repositories of everything that has occurred within their reflection, archives of moment upon moment of beauty and quiet contemplation. The lamps she passes now burn very low, their flames reduced to small points of light that seem to pulse with their own rhythm, their own gentle heartbeat. The shadows between these points of light grow deeper and more complex, creating patterns that shift and change as she moves, as the angles of reflection shift with her passage. In these deep shadows, she begins to sense other presences, not physical presences, but the accumulated essence of all who have walked these corridors before her. The mirrors she carries seem to serve as conduits for these presences, allowing her to feel connected not just to the current inhabitants of the harem, but to all the generations of women who have found sanctuary within these walls. She feels them as a gentle pressure in the air around her, as a warmth that seems to emanate from the mirrors themselves, as a sense of companionship that transforms her solitary journey into something shared, something communal. She understands that she walks not alone, but in the company of countless others, that her nightly pilgrimage through these corridors is part of a tradition that stretches back through time, that will continue forward into a future she cannot imagine, but can somehow feel approaching like dawn approaching the horizon. As she rounds a corner that brings her into the final section of her route, she encounters a chamber that is different from all the others, a space that seems to exist outside the normal architecture of the harem, a room where the usual rules of space and light seem altered. The walls here are covered in a substance that is not quite mirror and not quite glass, surfaces that reflect but also seem to generate their own illumination. When she enters this chamber, holding her mirrors before her, the effect is extraordinary. The mirrors she carries and the surfaces that cover the walls seem to communicate with each other, creating cascades of reflection that multiply and amplify until the chamber becomes filled with light that has no apparent source, radiance that seems to emerge from the very act of reflection itself. In this light, she sees herself as she has never seen herself before, not just from multiple angles, but from multiple moments in time, as if the mirrors are showing her not just her current appearance, but the accumulated history of her appearance. The way she has looked in this chamber during all her previous visits, the way she might look in visits yet to come. The experience is not disorienting, but profoundly centering. She sees herself as a constant presence within a world of change, a stable point around which the life of the harem revolves in patterns too large and too subtle for ordinary perception. She understands that her role as keeper of the mirrors has made her, in some sense, a mirror herself, a reflective surface that holds and returns the beauty and peace that surround her. The mirrors in her hand seem to pulse with life, with accumulated purpose and meaning. They have become warm in her grasp, not with physical heat, but with something deeper, the warmth of recognition, of completion, of perfect integration with their purpose. She stands in this chamber of befitting reflection for long minutes, feeling herself become part of something larger than her individual existence, part of the eternal dance of light and reflection that defines not just this place, but all places where beauty is cherished and maintained. When she finally moves to leave this extraordinary chamber, she does so with reluctance, understanding that she is leaving behind a moment of perfect clarity, perfect understanding of her place in the world. But she also understands that this clarity will remain with her, held within the mirrors she carries, available to her whenever she needs to remember the true nature of her work, the true meaning of her quiet service. The final corridors of her journey lead her through spaces that are devoted to rest and sleep, chambers where the lamps burn at their lowest, where the air is heavy with the scents of lavender and chamomile, where the very architecture seems designed to encourage repose and peaceful dreams. As she passes through these areas, she can hear the gentle sounds of the harem settling into deep night, the soft sighing of women who have found perfect comfort, the whisper of silk against silk as someone turns in their sleep, the almost inaudible murmur of dreams being dreamed. Her mirrors catch glimpses of this peaceful scene, fragments of sleeping forms, the gentle rise and fall of breath, the way moonlight falls across pillows and creates patterns of silver and shadow on silk covers. These, Images seem to accumulate in the mirror's surfaces, building a collection of peaceful moments that will remain with her long after this particular night has ended. As she approaches the end of her route, she begins to feel the particular satisfaction that comes with the completion of meaningful work. The mirrors she carries have fulfilled their purpose for this night. They have captured and reflected the beauty of the harem. They have served as silent witnesses to the life that flows through these corridors. They have connected her to every corner of her world and to every person who shares it with her. She reaches the chamber where she will rest her mirrors until tomorrow night brings another journey through the harem's passages. This chamber is small and simple, furnished only with what is necessary for the care and maintenance of the mirrors she tends. Soft cloths for polishing, oils for treating the silver, cases lined with silk where the mirrors can rest protected from dust and damage. But more than a storage room, this chamber feels like a sanctuary, a place where the accumulated peace and beauty that the mirrors have absorbed can settle and concentrate, can prepare itself for tomorrow's circulation through the harem's corridors. As she places each mirror in its designated resting place, she feels the weight of the night's experiences transferring from her hands to these safe repositories, feels herself becoming lighter as the mirrors accept the responsibility for holding what they have seen and reflected. The process of settling the mirrors into their resting places becomes a kind of prayer, a ritual that transforms the end of her journey into the beginning of preparation for the next journey. Each mirror finds its place with a soft sound, a gentle settling that speaks of completion, of rest well earned, of purpose fulfilled. As she performs this ritual, she feels the presence of all the beauty she has encountered during the night. The flowing water of fountains, the patterns of lamplight on silk, the peaceful faces of sleeping women, the infinite reflections in the chamber of mirrors. All of this beauty settles with the mirrors into their resting places, but it also remains with her, integrated into her own being, making her somehow more than she was when the night began. The final mirror finds its place, and she stands for a moment in the silence that follows. The chamber around her seems to glow with accumulated beauty, with the essential peace that defines life within the harem when it is at its best, when all the elements of architecture and decoration, of human presence and divine inspiration, combine to create something that transcends the merely physical. She understands that tomorrow night she will begin this journey again, that there will be new moments to witness and reflect, new examples of beauty to carry through the corridors, new opportunities to serve as a bridge between the scattered elements of the world she inhabits. But for now, her work is complete, and she can allow herself to rest in the satisfaction of duty fulfilled, of purpose served. The lamps in her chamber burn low, their flames settling into the steady rhythm that will carry them through until dawn. The air grows still, filled with the accumulated perfumes and incense of the day, with the essential fragrance of peace that seems to emanate from the very stones of the harem. When night settles over it like a silk coverlet, she prepares herself for rest with the same careful attention she brings to all her tasks. Her silk robes fold away into patterns that echo the geometric designs that decorate the walls around her. Her hair falls loose around her, peer shoulders, catching the gentle light of the lamps and throwing it back in waves that seem to move with their own life, their own rhythm. As she settles into the cushions that will be her bed for the few hours that remain before dawn, she feels the night's experiences settling into memory, becoming part of the accumulated wisdom that guides her through her days and nights within these walls. The mirrors rest in their places nearby, their silver surfaces gleaming softly in the lamplight, their frames catching and holding tiny reflections that seem to pulse with gentle life. The silence that surrounds her now is complete and perfect, broken only by the distant sound of water flowing in hidden fountains, the gentle whisper of air moving through corridors where lamps burn low and women sleep in perfect peace. This silence embraces her like an old friend, like a silk coverlet that has been warmed by many nights of restful sleep. She closes her eyes and feels herself becoming part of this silence, part of the essential peace that defines the harem when day's activities have ended and night's deeper rhythms take hold. Her breathing slows and deepens, finding its place in the larger rhythm that encompasses the breathing of all who sleep within these walls. The gentle pulse of the fountains, the almost inaudible whisper of flames consuming oil in countless lamps. The mirrors nearby seem to share in this rhythm, their surfaces reflecting the gentle movement of lamplight in patterns that pulse like slow heartbeats, like the breathing of some vast and benevolent presence that watch us over all who rest within the harem's protective embrace. She feels this presence as warmth, as safety, as the absolute certainty that she rests in a place where beauty and peace are not just appreciated, but actively maintained, actively protected from the chaos and uncertainty that exist in the world beyond these walls. Her last conscious thought is of tomorrow's journey, of the mirrors she will carry and the beauty she will witness, of the quiet satisfaction that comes from work that serves something larger than herself. But this thought fades quickly into the deeper peace of approaching sleep, into the soft darkness that rises around her like gentle water, like silk settling over skin, like the pentellated kindness of countless nights of rest taken in perfect safety and perfect peace. The lamps burn lower, their flames settling into the steady rhythm that will carry them through the remaining hours of night. The mirrors rest in their designated places, their surfaces catching and holding the last gentle movements of light and shadow as the chamber settles into the deep stillness that precedes dawn. In this stillness she finds her rest, her body folding into itself like a flower closing for the night, her breath becoming part of the larger breathing of the harem, her dreams preparing to dance with the dreams of all who sleep within these blessed walls. She glows, and she sleeps. The morning brings its own rhythm to the harem, a gentle stirring that begins before dawn and spreads through the corridors like ripples spreading across still water. She wakes to this rhythm, feeling it in her bones, before her mind fully comprehends the return of consciousness. The lamps that burned through the night have settled into the smallest possible flames, mere points of light that seem to pulse with the building's own heartbeat. And through the high windows, the first pale suggestions of daylight begin to filter down into the chambers below. But her day does not begin with the dawn. Her day begins in the moments between night and morning, in the space of transition when the harem exists in a state of perfect balance between the active peace of night and the gentle stirring of day. This is when she rises from her cushions, when she begins the careful ritual of preparing herself and her mirrors for the day's work, which will be different from the night's work, but no less important, no less sacred in its own quiet way. The mirrors rest where she placed them in the darkness before sleep, their silver surfaces now catching the first pale light that enters through the windows. As she approaches them, she sees that they have changed during the night, not in any physical way, but in some essential quality that speaks of rest taken and readiness renewed. They seem to glow by their own inner light, as if they have spent the dark hours accumulating energy, preparing themselves for another day of faithful service. She takes up the first mirror, feeling its familiar weight in her palm, feeling the way it seems to warm at her touch, as if recognizing her, as if welcoming the resumption of their partnership. The silver surface reflects her face back to her, but not quite as she expects. There is something in the reflection that seems to show not just her current appearance, but an accumulation of all her appearances. All the mornings when she has looked into this same mirror and seen herself preparing for another day of quiet service, the second mirror joins the first in her hands, and together they create a complex pattern of reflections that seems to expand beyond the physical boundaries of the chamber where she stands. In their silver depths, she can see fragments of the corridors she will walk today, glimpses of the faces she will encounter, suggestions of the moments she will witness and carry. In these polished surfaces, as she moves through the labyrinthian passages of the harem, the preparation of the mirrors is itself a ritual, though not one that requires elaborate ceremony or complex actions. It is simply the careful attention to detail that ensures the silver surfaces are perfectly clean, perfectly clear, perfectly ready to receive and reflect whatever they may encounter. She breathes on each surface and polishes it with silk cloth, so fine it seems made of captured moonlight, watching as her reflection clarifies and deepens until it seems she is looking not at a mirror, but through a window into some parallel world where everything is silver and shadow, light and perfect clarity. As she works, she begins to hear the sounds that signal the harem's gentle awakening, voices that murmur in languages she recognizes but does not speak, the soft sound of feet moving across marble floors, the whisper of silk against silk as women rise from their beds and begin the process of transforming sleep-tousled beauty into the more formal loveliness that will carry them through their days. These sounds do not intrude upon her concentration, but become part of it, providing a gentle soundtrack for her preparations. When the mirrors shine with perfect clarity, she arranges them in her hands with the careful attention that comes from years of practice. The position must be precisely right, allowing her to see what lies ahead while still being able to catch reflections from the sides, still being able to serve as a bridge between the scattered visual elements of the world through which she moves. The mirrors seem to settle into their proper positions with a soft sound, a gentle clicking that speaks of completion, of readiness, of perfect preparation for the day's work. She steps into the corridor outside her chamber, and immediately the mirrors begin their work. They catch the changing light that filters down from the high windows, the gentle movement of air that carries the perfumes of the harem from chamber to chamber. The first glimpses of the women who will populate her day with their unconscious beauty, their unguarded moments, their faces that appear and fade in the silver surfaces like memories made visible. The first face she sees belongs to a woman who stands at a window looking out toward the gardens that surround the harem. This woman is not young, but neither is she old. She exists in that perfect middle space where experience has deepened beauty without diminishing it, where wisdom has added layers of meaning to features that might once have been merely pretty, but have now become something more complex, more interesting, more truly beautiful. The woman does not see her approach, absorbed as she is in her contemplation of the garden beyond the window. But the mirrors catch her reflection, and in their silver depths, this contemplative figure becomes something eternal, not just a woman looking out a window, but the essence of contemplation itself, the crystallized moment of connection between inner thought and outer world, between the self and the landscape that surrounds and defines it. As she passes, the mirrors continue to hold this image, but gradually it begins to change, to blend with other images, other faces, other moments of unexpected beauty. This is how the mirrors work, not as simple reflective surfaces, but as vessels for the accumulation of beauty, repositories where one lovely moment dissolves into another, where the faces that appear and fade create a continuous tapestry of human presence and grace. The next face appears around a corner, where the corridor opens into one of the smaller courtyards. Here, a young woman sits beside a fountain, her fingers trailing in the water that flows from level to level in gentle cascades. Her face bears the particular quality of someone lost in thought, someone whose attention has turned inward while her body remains present in the physical world. The mirrors catch not just her features, but the way the light from the water plays across her skin, the way her dark hair moves slightly in the breeze created by the falling water, the way her eyes seem to see something beyond the immediate reality of stone and water and morning light. This face, like the first, settles into the silver surfaces and begins its own transformation. The mirrors hold it for a moment in perfect clarity, then allow it to begin its gentle dissolution into the larger pattern of accumulated images. But even as it fades, it leaves something behind, a quality of peaceful introspection that will color all the subsequent images, a sense of inner stillness that becomes part of the day's visual symphony. She moves deeper into the harem's morning life, and the mirrors accumulate more faces, more moments of unguarded beauty. A woman braiding her hair in a pattern so complex it seems to require mathematical precision. her reflection appearing in fragments as she turns her head this way and that, checking her work in a small hand mirror that creates additional layers of reflection. Mirror reflecting mirror in patterns that suggest infinity. The concentration on her face is absolute, the kind of attention that transforms a simple daily ritual into something approaching art. Another woman, older, sits in a chamber filled with morning light, reading from a book whose pages seem to glow in the gentle illumination. Her lips move slightly as she reads, and the mirrors catch these subtle movements, these tiny gestures that speak of complete engagement with the written word. Her face bears the particular beauty of someone whose mind is fully occupied with ideas, whose features reflect the inner light of active thought and deep consideration. The mirrors carry these faces forward, allowing each one to exist in silver suspension before beginning its transformation into memory, its integration into the larger pattern of accumulated beauty that defines her daily experience. She understands that she is not simply observing these women, but serving as a conduit for their beauty, allowing it to flow through the mirrors she carries, and thereby connect each individual moment to the larger symphony of loveliness that characterizes life within the harem. In a chamber devoted to music, she encounters a woman who sits with a lyre across her knees, her fingers moving across the strings in patterns that create melodies so subtle they seem more felt than heard. The woman's face reflects the music she creates, expressions that shift and flow with the rhythms she produces, emotions that rise and fall with the melodies that emerge from beneath her skilled fingers. The mirrors catch these shifting expressions, these faces that change from moment to moment as the music moves through different modes, different emotional territories. By more than capturing individual expressions, the mirrors seem to capture the music itself. The silver surfaces vibrate almost imperceptibly with the rhythms that fill the chamber. And when she moves away from this musical scene, she carries with her not just visual memories, but the echo of melody, the ghost of rhythm that will accompany her through the rest of her journey. The face of the musician continues to exist in the mirrors, even after she has left the musical chamber far behind. It appears and reappears in the silver depths, sometimes clear and distinct, sometimes blended with other faces, other expressions, creating composite images that seem to represent not individual women, but the essence of womankind itself, the accumulated beauty and grace that exists when women are free to explore their own natures, their own talents, their own capacity for creating beauty in the world around them. As the morning progresses and more light enters the harem through its carefully placed windows, the mirrors begin to work with increased complexity. The additional light creates more opportunities for reflection, more angles from which to catch glimpses of beauty, more possibilities for the kind of visual magic that transforms ordinary moments into something approaching the sacred. She passes through a chamber where several women are engaged in embroidery, their heads bent over silk stretched tight in wooden frames, their needles moving in patterns that gradually build into images of flowers and birds. geometric designs and flowing scripts that seem to move with life of their own. Each woman's face reflects the particular quality of her work, one showing the intense concentration required for the most delicate stitches, another displaying the satisfied smile that comes from seeing a difficult passage completed successfully, a third bearing the peaceful expression of someone whose hands know their work so well that the mind is free to wander into pleasant territories of thought and memory. The mirrors capture all these faces, all these expressions, but they also capture something more. The way the women's beauty is enhanced by their engagement with their work. The way skill and concentration and creative satisfaction add layers of meaning to features that might be merely pretty in repose, but become truly beautiful when animated by purpose and accomplishment. One of the embroiderers looks up as she passes, and for a moment their eyes meet in the reflection caught by one of the mirrors. In that moment of eye contact through silver, something passes between them, not words, for words are not necessary, but a recognition of shared existence within this protected world, shared participation in the daily creation and maintenance of beauty that defines life within the harem. The woman's eyes hold a kind of gentle warmth, an acknowledgement of her role as keeper of the mirrors, as silent witness to the life that flows through these corridors. This moment of connection adds another layer to the accumulation of faces in the mirrors. Now, among the images of women absorbed in their own activities, there appears the face of someone who has chosen to make contact, someone who has offered the gift of recognition and acknowledgement. This face seems to serve as an anchor for all the others, a point of stability around which the other images can organize themselves, can find their proper places in the visual symphony that the mirrors create and maintain. As she continues through the morning harem, she begins to notice that the faces in the mirrors are starting to communicate with each other, not in any literal sense. The reflections are still just reflections. The silver surfaces still just polished metal, but in some deeper way that transcends the physical properties of light and reflection. The face of the woman at the window seems to nod to the face of the musician, and the musician's expression shifts slightly in response, as if some silent conversation is taking place entirely within the realm of silver and memory. This communication between reflected faces creates a new dimension to her experience of carrying the mirrors. She begins to understand that she is not just witnessing individual moments of beauty, but facilitating a kind of community among these moments, allowing the isolated instances of grace and loveliness to find each other, to create connections that transcend the limitations of time and space and individual consciousness. In a chamber devoted to the preparation of cosmetics and perfumes, she encounters a woman whose face bears the particular beauty of someone engaged in the alchemy of enhancement, someone whose skill lies in discovering and amplifying the natural loveliness that exists within every human face. This woman works with powders and oils, with pigments and essences, creating combinations that will bring out the best features of those who will later apply these carefully crafted preparations. But the true beauty of this cosmetics maker lies not in the products she creates, but in the expression of complete absorption that transforms her features as she works. Her eyes hold the intensity of a scholar pursuing truth. Her hands move with the precision of an artist creating a masterpiece. Her entire being reflects the satisfaction of someone whose work serves the cause of beauty itself. The mirrors capture this face and add it to their growing collection, but they also seem to absorb something of the woman's purpose, something of her dedication to the enhancement of beauty. The silver surfaces begin to reflect not just the faces they encounter, but improved versions of those faces, versions that highlight the best features, that emphasize the most attractive qualities, that serve the same enhancing function as the cosmetics being prepared in this perfumed chamber. She moves through room after room, corridor after corridor, and the mirrors accumulate face after face, expression after expression, moment after moment of beauty caught in silver and transformed into something that transcends the merely visual. Some faces appear only once, brief glimpses of women absorbed in their own activities, their own thoughts, their own participation in the gentle life of the harem. Others reappear multiple times as she follows her route through interconnected chambers, allowing the mirrors to build more complete portraits, more complex understandings of the individuals whose beauty they capture and hold. There is the face of a woman who writes in a book with a pen that seems to flow across the page like liquid silver, her expression shifting between intense concentration and moments of pleased satisfaction as the right words find their way onto the paper. There is the face of another woman who tends to caged birds, her features reflecting the joy she takes in their songs, the tenderness she feels toward these small creatures whose beauty brightens the chamber where she works. Each face that appears in the mirrors brings its own particular quality of beauty, its own contribution to the growing symphony of human presence that defines her daily experience. But more than individual contributions, these faces begin to create harmonies among themselves, visual chords that resonate within the silver surfaces and create music that exists entirely in the realm of reflected light and accumulated memory. As the morning moves toward its midpoint, she finds herself in a section of the harem she visits less frequently. Chambers that are reserved for particular purposes or particular inhabitants. Here, the architecture is more intimate, more personal, designed to accommodate individual needs and preferences rather than the larger communal activities that characterize most of the harem's spaces. In one such chamber, she encounters a face that stops her in her passage, that demands a longer moment of attention and reflection. This is the face of a woman who sits in perfect stillness beside a window that looks out onto a private garden. A woman whose beauty seems to exist in a category entirely its own. Her features are regular without being predictable, lovely without being merely pretty, expressing a kind of deep peace that seems to emanate from some inner source of contentment and wisdom. But what makes this face extraordinary is not its individual features, but the way. It seems to contain and express the essence of all the other faces. She has encountered as if this woman somehow embodies the accumulated beauty of the entire harem, as if her individual loveliness has been enhanced and deepened by proximity to all the other forms of beauty that flourish within these walls. The mirrors seem to recognize something special about this face, something that sets it apart from all the others they have captured and held. The silver surfaces become perfectly still, perfectly clear, as if they want to ensure that every detail of this extraordinary beauty is recorded with absolute fidelity. The reflection that appears in the mirrors is so vivid, so lifelike, that for a moment it seems the woman exists more fully in the silver world than in the physical world, as if the mirrors have captured not just her appearance, but her essential being. The woman does not acknowledge her presence, absorbed as she is in her own contemplation, but there is something in her stillness that suggests awareness, something in her perfect composure that indicates she understands her role as a focal point for beauty, as someone whose presence enhances and is enhanced by the lovely world that surrounds her. The mirrors hold this face for a long time, longer than they have held any other image during this morning's journey. It seems to serve as a kind of organizing principle for all the other faces, a central point around which the other accumulated images can arrange themselves, can find their proper relationships to each other and to the larger pattern of beauty that defines life within the harem. When she finally moves away from this extraordinary encounter, she carries with her a sense of having witnessed something approaching perfection, something that represents the highest achievement of the life of beauty and grace that the harem makes possible. The face continues to glow in the mirrors long after the woman herself has disappeared from view, serving as a kind of beacon that illuminates all the other images, that gives them context and meaning and proper proportion. As she continues her journey through the morning harem, she begins to notice that all the faces she encounters seem somehow enhanced by their proximity to that central image of perfect beauty. The woman reading poetry seems more absorbed in her verses. The musician's melodies seem more complex and affecting. The embroiderer's stitches seem more precise and artistically ambitious. It is as if the presence of perfect beauty in the mirrors has raised the standard for all beauty, has created an atmosphere in which everyone's natural loveliness is amplified and refined. The mirrors themselves seem to respond to this heightened atmosphere. Their silver surfaces glow with increased intensity. Their reflections become more vivid and lifelike. Their capacity to capture and hold beauty seems expanded beyond their normal, considerable abilities. She feels as if she is carrying not just polished metal, but vessels of pure possibility, containers that can hold and transform any beauty they encounter, no matter how subtle or complex or extraordinary. In a chamber devoted to the study of mathematics and astronomy, she encounters a woman whose face bears the particular beauty of intellectual engagement, someone whose features reflect the satisfaction of understanding complex relationships, of seeing patterns that connect the earthly world to the celestial spheres above. This woman works with instruments of brass and silver, measuring angles and calculating distances. Her mind engaged with concepts that span the space between the intimate human world and the vast cosmic order that contains and defines it. The mirrors capture this face and immediately begin to integrate it with the mathematical patterns that surround it. The woman's features seem to align themselves with the geometric principles that govern the instruments she uses, creating reflections that suggest deep harmonies between human beauty and cosmic order, between individual loveliness and universal mathematical truths. This integration of human beauty with abstract principles adds another dimension to the mirror's growing collection of faces. Now, among the images of women engaged in practical arts and aesthetic pursuits, there appears the face of someone whose beauty is enhanced by engagement with pure thought, whose features reflect the particular satisfaction that comes from understanding truths that exist beyond the immediate world of sensation and appearance. As the morning reaches its peak, with sunlight flooding through the high windows and creating complex patterns of light and shadow throughout the harem's corridors, she finds herself approaching the chambers where the day's more formal activities take place. Here women gather to receive instruction in various arts and sciences, to participate in ceremonies that mark the passage of time and the achievement of various milestones, to engage in the kind of structured interaction that maintains the social harmony essential to life within the harem's protected environment. The faces she encounters in these more formal settings bear a different quality from those she has seen in the private chambers and intimate spaces. These are faces composed for public view, features arranged to express the particular role each woman plays within the harem's complex social structure. But the mirrors seem to see through this public composure to the individual beauty that lies beneath, the personal loveliness that exists independent of social role or ceremonial function. One face belongs to a woman who clearly holds a position of authority within the harem's hierarchy, someone whose beauty has been enhanced rather than diminished by the responsibility she carries for the welfare and happiness of others. Her features express a combination of strength and gentleness, authority and compassion. That creates a particular kind of loveliness, the beauty of someone who has learned to balance personal grace with public duty. Another face belongs to a much younger woman, someone who is clearly still learning her place within the harem's social structure, still discovering how to integrate her individual nature with the expectations and opportunities that define her new life. Her beauty has the fresh quality of someone still growing into herself, still exploring the various possibilities that exist within her nature, still open to transformation and development. The mirrors capture both these faces and begin the complex work of integrating them with all the other accumulated images. The contrast between experience and inexperience, between established authority and developing potential, creates a kind of visual dialogue within the silver surfaces. A conversation about the nature of beauty and its relationship to time, to growth, to the various stages of human development and social integration. As she moves through these more formal spaces, she begins to understand that the mirrors are not just capturing individual faces, but documenting an entire world, creating a visual record of a complete society, organized around the cultivation and appreciation of beauty in all its various forms. Each face that appears in the silver surfaces represents not just individual loveliness, but a particular approach to the life of grace and refinement that the harem makes possible. The accumulated faces in the mirrors begin to suggest the full complexity of this society, the various roles and functions that different individuals fulfill, the different stages of development and achievement that create hierarchy without destroying harmony, the different talents and interests that contribute to the overall richness of communal life. It becomes clear that beauty, in this context, is not simply a matter of physical appearance, but a comprehensive approach to living that encompasses intellectual, artistic, spiritual, and social dimensions. As the formal morning activities draw toward their close, and the harem begins its transition toward the quieter rhythms of midday, she finds herself returning to the more intimate corridors where individual women pursue their personal interests and private contemplations. Here, the faces in the mirrors begin to relax from their public composure, beginning the gentle transformation back toward the more private forms of beauty that characterize life when it is not on display, when it exists simply for its own sake rather than for any external purpose. This transition creates its own particular beauty in the mirrors, the gradual softening of features as women move from public to private space, the gentle relaxation of carefully composed expressions into more natural forms of loveliness, the return to the kind of unguarded beauty that appears when people feel completely safe, completely accepted, completely free to be themselves without reservation or artifice. The mirrors seem to understand and appreciate this transition, and they capture it with particular sensitivity and care. The silver surfaces reflect not just the changing expressions, but the emotional quality of the change itself, the relief of returning to privacy, the pleasure of relaxing into natural rhythms, the deep satisfaction of existing within a protected environment where such transitions are possible and welcomed. She carries these transitional moments through corridor after corridor, watching as the mirrors accumulate more and more evidence of the rich complexity that defines individual life within the collective harmony of the harem. Each face that appears contributes its own particular variation to the larger theme of beauty lived as a daily practice, beauty understood not as a static quality, but as an active principle that guides and shapes every aspect of existence. As she approaches the final phase of her morning journey through the harem, she begins to sense a change in the quality of the faces that appear in the mirrors. These later faces seem somehow deeper, more reflective, as if the progression through the morning has created a kind of cumulative effect, as if each woman's beauty has been enhanced by its proximity to all the other forms of beauty that have been reflected and accumulated in the silver surfaces she carries. The faces that appear now seem to bear traces of all the faces that have come before. The contemplative expression of the woman at the window, the absorbed concentration of the musician, the perfect composure of the extraordinary beauty who served as a central organizing principle for all the others. It becomes impossible to separate individual faces from the collective beauty they create together. Impossible to understand any single moment of loveliness apart from its relationship to the larger symphony of grace that defines the harem's daily life. This blending of individual and collective beauty creates in the mirrors a kind of visual music, patterns of light and shadow that seem to move with their own rhythm, their own melody, their own complex harmonies that speak of the deep connections that exist between all forms of authentic beauty. The silver surfaces become not just reflective tools, but musical instruments, playing visual symphonies that exist in the space between memory and imagination, between individual perception and universal truth. As she completes her circuit of the morning harem and begins to move toward the chambers where she will rest and prepare the mirrors for their afternoon service, she carries with her an accumulated weight of beauty that feels almost physical, almost tangible in its richness and complexity. The faces that have appeared and faded in the silver surfaces have created a kind of visual archive, a repository of human loveliness that will remain with her long after the specific images have dissolved into memory. The final face she encounters on this morning journey appears in a chamber devoted to prayer and meditation, where a woman kneels in perfect stillness before a window that frames a view of distant mountains. This woman's face bears the particular beauty of someone who has achieved perfect integration between inner and outer world, between personal desire and cosmic order, between individual will and divine intention. The mirrors capture this face with extraordinary clarity, and in its reflection, all the other faces seem to find their ultimate meaning, their proper place in the larger pattern of beauty that connects human loveliness to the fundamental harmony that governs the universe itself. This final face serves as a kind of benediction for the morning's journey, a blessing that sanctifies all the beauty that has been witnessed and carried through the corridors of the harem. As she settles the mirrors into their resting places for the midday pause, she feels the accumulated faces beginning their own process of rest and integration. The silver surfaces seem to sigh as they release the visual tensions of the morning, as they allow the accumulated images to settle into deeper layers of memory and meaning. But even in rest, the faces continue their subtle communication with each other, continuing to create the visual harmonies that transform individual beauty into something approaching the sacred. She understands that when the mirrors wake from their midday rest, they will carry forward not just specific images, but the essential quality of beauty that these images represent. The deep peace that comes from living in accordance with aesthetic principles. The satisfaction of participating in the daily creation and maintenance of loveliness. The profound joy of existing within a world where beauty is not just appreciated, but actively cultivated as a way of life. The faces fade into silver dreams, but their essence remains, ready to blend with the new faces that the afternoon will bring, ready to contribute their accumulated wisdom to the ongoing symphony of beauty that defines life within the harem's blessed walls. In the gentle silence that follows their settling into rest, she feels the deep satisfaction that comes from work that serves something larger than itself, from service that connects individual effort to universal principles of harmony and grace. She folds into herself, carrying within her own being the integrated beauty of all the faces she has witnessed, all the moments of grace she has facilitated, all the connections she has helped create between the scattered elements of loveliness that flourish within the harem's protective embrace. The faces live within her now, ready to emerge again in new combinations, new harmonies, new expressions of the eternal beauty that finds its perfect expression in the daily life of women free to explore and express their deepest nature. The mirrors rest, the faces dream, and she glows, and she sleeps. The afternoon light that filters through the high windows carries a different quality from the morning illumination, warmer and more golden, creating pools of honey-colored radiance that move slowly across the marble floors, as the sun traces its arc across the sky above Istanbul. In this transformed light, she wakes from her midday rest with a sense of anticipation for the work that lies ahead, work that will be different from the morning's collection of faces and expressions, work that will require a different kind of attention, a different form of service to the mirrors that have become her companions and collaborators in the daily maintenance of beauty. The chamber where she has rested is filled with this golden afternoon light, and as she rises from her cushions, she sees that the mirrors in their resting places have changed during the hours of midday sleep. Their silver surfaces seem to glow with accumulated warmth, as if they have absorbed not just light, but the essential quality of the peaceful hours that have passed while they rested. They appear more alive than ever, more ready to fulfill whatever purpose the afternoon may require of them. But today's afternoon work will not involve carrying the mirrors through corridors and chambers. Today's work will take place in a special chamber deep within the harem, a room devoted entirely to the care and maintenance of mirrors, a space where the silver surfaces that serve throughout the harem receive the careful attention necessary to maintain their perfect clarity, their flawless capacity for reflection. This is the mirror bath, and it is here that she will spend the afternoon hours in intimate communion with the tools of her trade. The mirror bath is located in a part of the harem that few inhabitants ever see, reached through corridors that grow progressively quieter and more secluded as they penetrate toward the heart of the building's structure. These are service corridors, designed for the movement of those whose work maintains the visible beauty of the harem, but who themselves remain largely invisible, largely unacknowledged in their essential contributions to the daily miracle of life lived as aesthetic experience. As she makes her way through these quieter passages, carrying her to familiar mirrors along with several others that require attention, she feels the particular peace that comes from moving toward work that serves no external purpose, work that exists purely for the maintenance and enhancement of the tools themselves. There is something deeply satisfying about this kind of service, attention given not to achieve visible results, but simply to ensure that the invisible infrastructure of beauty remains strong and reliable. The mirror bath itself occupies a chamber that seems to exist outside the normal architecture of the harem. The ceiling here is lower, than in the grand corridors and reception chambers, creating an atmosphere of intimacy and concentration. The walls are lined with shelves and alcoves designed to hold mirrors of every size and description. From tiny hand mirrors, no larger than coins, to great expanses of polished silver that can reflect entire rooms, entire groups of people, entire ceremonies in their gleaming depths. At the center of the chamber stands a series of basins carved from single blocks of marble, each basin filled with water that has been scented with oils and essences designed specifically for the cleaning and maintenance of silver surfaces. The water in these basins seems to glow with its own inner light, and when she approaches them, she can see her reflection multiplied in their still surfaces, creating an effect similar to what the mirrors themselves produce, but softer, more fluid, more integrated with the surrounding atmosphere of the chamber. The ritual of the mirror bath begins with the selection of the proper basin for each mirror. 4 different types of silver require different treatments, different combinations of oils and essences to achieve perfect clarity and reflective power. Some mirrors need only the gentlest cleaning with water that has been infused with rose petals, while others require more intensive treatment with solutions that contain minerals gathered from distant mountains, salts taken from sacred springs, essences distilled from plants that grow only in moonlight. She begins with her 2 familiar companions, the mirrors that accompany her on her daily journeys through the harem's corridors. These mirrors know her touch, know her care, and as she lowers them into the first basin, she can feel them responding to the warm, scented water with something that seems almost like gratitude, almost like relief at receiving the attention they need to maintain their perfect service. The process of cleaning a mirror is both simple and complex, requiring mechanical skill, but also a kind of intuitive understanding of what each individual mirror needs. What will bring out its best qualities? What will enhance, rather than merely maintain, its capacity for faithful reflection? She works with cloths made from silk so fine it seems made of solidified air, with oils that have been aged in cedar containers until they achieve the perfect consistency for polishing silver without leaving any residue that might cloud future reflections. As she works, the mirrors seem to come alive under her hands. The silver surfaces warm to her touch, and their reflective capacity seems to deepen, and intensify with each gentle stroke of the polishing cloth. In their cleaned surfaces, she can see not just her own reflection, but suggestions of all the images they have captured and held during their service, faces that appear and fade like memories made visible, moments of beauty that have been absorbed into the silver itself and now emerge like ghosts returning to life. The water in the basins responds to the presence of the mirrors, its surface creating gentle ripples that catch and throw back the afternoon light in patterns that dance across the walls of the chamber. These patterns seem to move with purpose, with intention, creating a kind of visual music that accompanies the work of cleaning and polishing, that transforms the practical task of mirror maintenance into something approaching ceremony, something that touches the sacred dimensions of service to beauty. As she works with each mirror, she begins to understand that the cleaning process is not just about removing the physical accumulations of dust and moisture that cloud silver surfaces over time. It is also about renewing the mirror's spiritual capacity for reflection, their ability to serve as bridges between the visible world and the realm of pure beauty that exists beyond ordinary perception. Each stroke of the polishing cloth seems to clear away not just physical impurities, but the accumulated weight of too much seeing, too much reflecting, too much faithful service that has begun to tire the silver itself. The first mirror to emerge from its bath gleams with renewed life, its surface so clear and bright it seems less like polished metal than like captured starlight, like crystallized moonbeams, like the essential quality of reflection made manifest in physical form. When she holds this mirror up to catch the afternoon light that streams through the chamber's windows, the silver surface seems to generate its own illumination, creating reflections that are more vivid and lifelike than the objects they reflect. The second mirror receives the same careful attention, but its cleaning reveals different qualities, different potentials that have been hidden beneath the subtle accumulations of daily use. This mirror's silver has a slightly different tone, a warmer quality that seems particularly suited to reflecting human faces, human expressions, the subtle variations of beauty that appear in living features animated by emotion and thought. As she continues working through the collection of mirrors that require attention, she begins to notice that each one has its own particular character, its own special qualities that emerge only when it receives the kind of careful, individual attention that the mirror bath provides. Some mirrors excel at capturing movement, their surfaces somehow able to hold the essence of gestures, the grace of bodies in motion. The way silk flows around a walking figure or hair moves in response to turning head. Others seem particularly suited to reflecting stillness, to capturing the deep peace of meditation, the perfect composure of sleep, the eternal quality that appears in faces that have achieved complete integration with their circumstances. The discovery of these individual characteristics adds a new dimension to her understanding of her work with mirrors. She begins to see that her role is not just to keep reflective surfaces clean and functional, but to understand the particular gifts that each mirror brings to the service of beauty, to ensure that each mirror is employed in ways that take advantage of its special qualities, its unique contribution to the overall enterprise of maintaining and enhancing the lovely world of the harem. As the afternoon progresses and more mirrors receive the careful attention of the mirror bath, the chamber itself seems to transform. The cleaned mirrors, arranged on their designated shelves and in their proper alcoves, create a kind of hall of reflections where light bounces from surface to surface in patterns of increasing complexity and beauty. The chamber becomes filled with a kind of visual music, patterns of light and shadow that seem to move with their own rhythm, their own melody, their own sophisticated harmonies. In the midst of this visual symphony, she continues her work with the focused attention that the task requires. But she also begins to experience a kind of expanded awareness that comes from being surrounded by many perfectly tuned reflective surfaces. It becomes impossible to separate her own reflection from the countless reflections that surround her. Impossible to maintain a clear sense of individual boundary when every movement, every gesture, every shift of position creates new patterns of reflected light, new combinations of image and reflection that seem to exist in dimensions beyond the merely physical. This expanded awareness brings with it a deeper understanding of the mirror's true nature. She begins to see that they are not simply passive, reflective surfaces, but active participants in the creation of beauty. Tools that do not merely show what exists, but somehow enhance it, somehow bring out qualities and potentials that might otherwise remain hidden or undeveloped. The mirrors seem to see not just what is, but what might be. Not just present beauty, but the beautiful possibilities that exist within every person, every moment, every situation they encounter. The basin of scented water where she works seems to respond to this expanding understanding. The water becomes more luminous, more alive, as if it too is participating in the revelation of the mirror's true nature. The surface of the water creates reflections that seem more vivid than physical reality, images that appear to possess depth and dimensionality that exceed the actual depth of the water itself. As she lifts another mirror from its bath, water dripping from its perfectly cleaned surface in droplets that catch the light like tiny prisms, she sees in its silver depths not just her own reflection, but something more, a kind of composite image that seems to combine her own features with characteristics drawn from all the faces the mirror has reflected during its service. She appears in the silver surface as herself, but also as the accumulated essence of all the beauty the mirror has witnessed, all the loveliness it has captured and held in its memory. This revelation transforms her understanding of her own relationship to the work she performs. She begins to see that she is not separate from the mirrors she tends, but intimately connected to them, that her identity has become intertwined with theirs through the countless hours of shared service, shared dedication to the maintenance and enhancement of beauty. She has become, in some sense, a mirror herself, a reflective surface that holds and returns the beauty that surrounds her, that serves as a conduit for the aesthetic experiences that define life within the harem. The realization brings with it a profound sense of peace and integration. She understands now that her work is not just practical service, but spiritual practice, not just the maintenance of tools, but participation in something approaching the sacred dimension of existence. The mirrors she cleans and polishes are not just utilitarian objects, but sacred vessels, containers for beauty that connects the immediate world of the harem to larger principles of harmony and grace that govern the universe itself. As this understanding deepens, the chamber around her seems to respond with increased luminosity, increased aliveness. The patterns of reflected light become more complex, more beautiful, creating visual harmonies that seem to resonate not just in the eyes, but in the entire body, in the soul itself. She feels as if she has entered a kind of temple, a sacred space where the ordinary work of cleaning and maintenance becomes transformed into worship. into communion with the divine principles that find their expression in every authentic manifestation of beauty. The mirrors that have already received their baths seem to glow with renewed purpose, their surfaces radiating a kind of spiritual energy that fills the chamber with warmth and light. They no longer appear as separate objects, but as facets of a single, complex jewel, each one contributing its own particular quality to the overall brilliance that illuminates the entire space. In the midst of this transformed environment, she continues her work with increasing reverence, increasing awareness of the sacred nature of what she performs. Each mirror that receives the attention of the bath emerges not just cleaner, but somehow more itself, more perfectly aligned with its essential nature as a vehicle for reflection and revelation. The cleaning process becomes a kind of resurrection, a return to original purity and purpose that allows each mirror to fulfill its highest potential for service to beauty. The water in the basins seems to have absorbed something from each mirror that passes through it, and now it glows with accumulated wisdom, accumulated experience of serving as the medium through which silver surfaces return to their perfect clarity. The water has become sacred water, blessed by its contact with instruments of beauty, transformed by its role in the maintenance of tools that serve the highest human aspirations toward grace and loveliness. As she reaches the deeper phases of her work, dealing with mirrors that require more intensive treatment, more complex combinations of oils and essences, she finds herself entering a state of consciousness that transcends ordinary awareness. The work requires such complete attention, such perfect integration of hand and eye, and intuitive understanding, that the normal boundaries of self-consciousness dissolve, leaving only the immediate reality of silver and water, cloth and oil, reflection and refraction, creating endless patterns of beauty and meaning. In this state of expanded awareness, she begins to perceive presences in the mirror chamber that are not physically visible, but somehow undeniably real. These are the accumulated spirits of all who have served beauty in this place, all who have dedicated their lives to the maintenance and enhancement of loveliness, all who have found in such service a path toward transcendence of ordinary limitation and connection with universal principles of harmony and grace. These presences do not speak or make themselves known through any ordinary form of communication, but she feels their approval, their gratitude, their companionship in the work she performs. She understands that she is part of a tradition that stretches back through time, that connects her to countless others who have found in the service of beauty a way of participating in something eternal, something that transcends the boundaries of individual existence and connects human effort to cosmic purpose. The mirrors that have received the most intensive treatment emerge from their baths, transformed almost beyond recognition. Their silver surfaces seem to possess depth that extends far beyond their physical thickness, creating reflections that appear to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. When she holds these mirrors up to catch the afternoon light, they seem to open windows into other worlds, other realms where beauty exists in its pure form, unclouded by the limitations and imperfections that characterize ordinary reality. One mirror in particular captures her attention as it emerges from its final rinse in water that has been blessed with essences distilled from flowers that bloom only at midnight, under the influence of certain configurations of stars. This mirror's surface possesses such perfect clarity that it seems less like polished metal than like crystallized space itself, like a fragment of dew, the cosmic void that has been shaped into a tool for human use, while retaining its connection to the infinite dimensions from which it came. As she holds this extraordinary mirror, angling it to catch the golden afternoon light that streams through the chamber's windows, she sees reflected in its depths not just the physical reality of the chamber around her, but suggestions of other chambers, other times, other moments when such perfect clarity has been achieved through devoted service to beauty. The mirror seems to hold memories of all the hands that have polished it, all the faces that have looked into its depths, all the moments of revelation and recognition that have occurred when perfect reflection has revealed truths too subtle for ordinary perception, but more than memories. The mirror seems to hold prophecies, suggestions of future moments, when its perfect clarity will facilitate new discoveries, new revelations, new connections between the immediate world of the harem and the eternal principles that govern all authentic manifestations of beauty. She sees in its depths faces she has not yet encountered, expressions she has not yet witnessed, moments of grace and loveliness that wait in the future like flowers waiting for the proper season to bloom. The vision is brief but profound, and when it fades, she finds herself changed by the experience. She understands now that her work with mirrors connects her not just to the present life of the harem, but to all times, all places where human beings have sought to create and maintain beauty as a daily practice, as a way of living that transforms ordinary existence into something approaching the sacred. As she continues working through the remaining mirrors, each one requiring its own particular combination of attention and care she carries with her this expanded understanding of the true nature of her service. The work becomes not just the cleaning of reflective surfaces, but a form of communion with the eternal, a way of participating in the ongoing creation and maintenance of beauty that connects the intimate world of the harem to the cosmic order that contains and defines it. The final mirrors to receive attention are the largest and most complex, great expanses of silver that require careful handling and specialized treatments. These mirrors serve in the grandest chambers of the harem, where formal ceremonies take place, where the full hierarchy and beauty of the community displays itself in ritual and celebration. The cleaning of these mirrors requires not just technical skill, but understanding of their ceremonial function, their role in amplifying and reflecting the formal beauty that defines the harem's most important occasions. As she works with these grand mirrors, lowering them into basins large enough to accommodate their size, she feels the weight of their accumulated experience, their memory of all the ceremonies they have witnessed and reflected, all the formal beauty they have helped create through their perfect clarity and faithfulness. These mirrors have seen empires rise and fall reflected in their depths, have captured the images of countless generations of women whose beauty has been enhanced and preserved through their reflective power. The cleaning of these ceremonial mirrors requires the most advanced techniques, combinations of oils and essences that have been perfected over centuries of dedicated service. The water in their baths glows with pecumulated wisdom, with the combined knowledge of all who have performed this work before her, all who have understood the sacred nature of maintaining perfect clarity in service to formal beauty. As the great mirrors emerge from their baths, their surfaces gleaming with renewed life and purpose, they seem to transform the entire chamber into a cathedral of reflection, a sacred space where light and image combine to create experiences that transcend ordinary perception. The patterns of reflected light become so complex, so beautiful, that they seem to possess their own intelligence, their own purpose, their own contribution to the ongoing creation of beauty that defines the universe at its deepest levels. In the midst of this cathedral of reflection, she completes her work with a sense of having participated in something far greater than individual effort, something that connects her small contribution to the vast enterprise of cosmic creation itself. The mirrors she has cleaned and polished will return to their service tomorrow, transformed, renewed, more capable than ever of fulfilling their essential function as tools for the creation and maintenance of beauty. But before they return to active service, they must rest and integrate the benefits of their purification. She arranges them in their designated places throughout the mirror chamber, positioning each one so that it catches and reflects the afternoon light in patterns that contribute to the overall harmony of the space. The chamber becomes a symphony of reflection, each mirror contributing its own note to the complex harmonies that fill the space with visual music. As she steps back to observe the results of her afternoon's work, she sees that the mirror chamber has been transformed into something that transcends its practical function. It has become a kind of temple, a sacred space where the tools of beauty receive the reverence and care they deserve, where the practical and the spiritual merge in service to ideals that elevate human existence above the merely material. The mirrors rest in perfect stillness, their surfaces calm as mountain lakes, their reflections creating patterns of light that seem to breathe with their own rhythm. In this stillness, she can see reflected not just the physical reality of the chamber, but the accumulated beauty of all the cleaning and polishing, all the devoted service that has been offered here, all the understanding that has been gained through intimate contact with instruments of reflection and revelation. The light that fills the chamber now seems different from ordinary afternoon light. It possesses a quality of blessing, of benediction, as if the work that has been performed here has somehow sanctified the very air, has transformed the ordinary photons that stream through the windows into something approaching divine radiance. In this blessed light, every reflection becomes a prayer, every pattern of reflected illumination becomes a hymn of praise to the beauty that governs and guides authentic human existence. As the afternoon moves toward evening, and the quality of light begins its slow transition toward the deeper gold that precedes sunset, she prepares to leave the mirror chamber, to return the two mirrors that are her constant companions to their evening service. But she does so with reluctance, understanding that she is leaving behind a sacred space, a place where she has touched the deepest meanings of her service, where she has experienced direct communion with the principles that guide and inspire her daily work. The mirrors that will accompany her on the evening's journey seem somehow different now, transformed by their experience in the mirror bath. Their surfaces possess a new depth, a new clarity that seems to extend beyond mere physical reflection into realms of spiritual perception. As she lifts them from their resting places, she feels their renewed readiness for service, their enhanced capacity to serve as bridges between the visible world and the invisible beauties that exist beyond ordinary perception. But more than their enhanced capacity for reflection, she senses in these mirrors a new quality of companionship, a deeper connection between her own consciousness and the silver spirits that inhabit the polished surfaces. The cleaning process has somehow merged her identity more completely with theirs, creating a partnership that transcends the ordinary relationship between person and tool, between user and instrument. As she prepares to leave the mirror chamber, carrying her renewed companions toward the evening corridors where they will resume their service to beauty, she pauses for a final moment of appreciation for what has been accomplished during these afternoon hours. The chamber glows around her with accumulated light, accumulated beauty, accumulated understanding of the sacred nature of service to aesthetic ideals. The mirrors that remain in the chamber seem to bid her farewell with gentle flashes of reflected light, patterns of illumination that speak of gratitude, of satisfaction, of readiness for tomorrow's service. She understands that she leaves behind not just clean tools, but renewed instruments of beauty, mirrors that have been restored to their full capacity for facilitating the daily miracle of reflection and revelation that defines life within the harem's blessed walls. The passage through the service corridors that lead away from the mirror chamber feels different now, charged with the understanding she has gained during her afternoon of intimate service. The mirrors in her hands seem lighter somehow, not in physical weight, but in spiritual burden. They have been cleansed not just of physical impurities, but of the accumulated weight of too much faithful service, too much devoted reflection of the world's beauty and pain. As she emerges into the main corridors of the harem, where the evening activities are beginning to stir, where lamps are being lit against the approaching darkness, she carries with her the deep satisfaction that comes from work that serves purposes larger than immediate practical necessity. The mirror bath has revealed to her the true nature of her service. The way her daily work with mirrors connects her to eternal principles of beauty and grace that transcend the boundaries of time and space. The faces that begin to appear in the corridors as evening approaches seem somehow enhanced by her renewed understanding, somehow more beautiful because she now sees them through mirrors that have been purified, that have been restored to their perfect capacity for reflection and revelation. The silver surfaces in her hands catch glimpses of these evening faces with unprecedented clarity, with a vividness that suggests not just faithful reproduction, but active enhancement of the beauty they reflect. As she moves through the corridors toward whatever evening service awaits her, she understands that she carries not just mirrors, but instruments of transformation. Tools that do not merely show what exists, but help create what might exist. That serve not just the documentation of beauty, but its active cultivation and enhancement. The afternoon in the mirror bath has revealed to her the true nature of her calling. The way her quiet service connects her to purposes that extend far beyond the immediate world of the harem, into realms of cosmic significance. But this understanding brings with it not burden, but liberation, not weight, but lightness. She moves through the evening corridors with a new sense of purpose, a deeper appreciation for the work that has chosen her as much as she has chosen it. The mirrors in her hands seem to pulse with life, with renewed readiness for whatever service the evening may require, whatever beauty they may be called upon to witness and reflect and enhance through their perfect clarity. In the distance, she can hear the evening call to prayer echoing across the city. The voices of muezzins rising from minarets that pierce the darkening sky like prayers made visible. The sound seems to resonate in the mirrors she carries, creating gentle vibrations in the silver surfaces that suggest they, too, are participating in this daily acknowledgement of divine presence. This recognition of the sacred dimensions that underlie all authentic beauty. The corridors around her glow with the warm light of evening lamps, creating pools of golden illumination that the mirrors catch and multiply, that they transform into patterns of reflected radiance that dance across walls and ceilings in rhythms that seem to match the distant prayers. She moves through this illuminated world as both observer and participant, both keeper of mirrors and mirror herself, both servant of beauty and embodiment of the principles she serves. As the evening settles around the harem like a silk veil, as the transition from day to night creates its own particular atmosphere of peace and contemplation, she continues her movement through corridors that seem transformed by the day's work, enhanced by the understanding she has gained in the mirror bath. The mirrors in her hands are ready for whatever the evening may bring, prepared to serve with renewed clarity and purpose the eternal enterprise of creating and maintaining beauty as a daily practice, as a way of life that connects human effort to cosmic purpose. The faces that will appear in the mirrors during the evening hours will find themselves reflected in silver surfaces that have been purified, that have been restored to their essential nature as instruments of beauty and revelation. The women of the harem will see themselves in mirrors that do not merely show what exists, but suggest what is possible, that reflect not just present appearance, but the potential for enhanced beauty that exists within every human face, every moment of authentic self-presentation. But these possibilities remain in the future, waiting to unfold as the evening progresses. For now, she moves through the transitional moments of day becoming night, carrying her renewed mirrors toward whatever service awaits them, carrying within herself the deep peace that comes from work that touches the sacred dimensions of existence, from service that connects individual effort to universal principles of harmony and grace. The mirror bath is complete. The silver surfaces gleam with renewed life, and she carries forward the blessing of perfect clarity, the gift of enhanced reflection, the promise of beauty served and beauty serving in return. In the gentle rhythm of her steps against marble floors, in the soft sound of silk moving against silk, in the almost inaudible whisper of purified mirrors ready for renewed service, the evening finds its beginning, and beauty prepares to unfold in patterns yet unknown, but already blessed by the devotion that prepares the instruments through which it will manifest. She glows, and she continues. The deep hours of night bring a different quality of silence to the harem, a stillness so complete it seems to possess weight and substance of its own. This is the time when the formal activities of the day have long since concluded, when even the gentle evening conversations have faded into whispers and finally into the profound quiet that settles over the world, when most of its inhabitants have found their way into sleep. It is in these deep hours, when she believes herself to be alone with the mirrors and the darkness, that the most extraordinary experiences occur. The corridors she walks now are lit only by the smallest flames. Oil lamps turned so low they create more shadow than illumination. Pools of gentle light separated by expanses of velvety darkness that seem to breathe with their own mysterious life. In this minimal lighting, the mirrors she carries become something more than reflective surfaces. They become windows into dimensions that remain hidden during the brighter hours, gateways to experiences that can only occur when the ordinary world has released its hold on perception and allowed deeper forms of seeing to emerge. She moves through this transformed landscape with the careful attention of someone who has learned to navigate by different senses, who has developed the capacity to find her way not just by sight, but by the subtle air currents that flow through the corridors, by the almost inaudible sounds that architecture makes when it settles into its nighttime configurations, by the gentle warmth that radiates from marble that has absorbed the day's light and now releases it slowly back into the surrounding darkness. The mirrors in her hands respond to this nocturnal environment by becoming more sensitive, more receptive to the subtle forms of beauty that emerge only in darkness, only when the harsh clarities of daylight have given way to the softer, more mysterious illuminations that belong to night. In their silver depths, she begins to see reflections that bear only the most tenuous relationship to the physical reality that surrounds her, images that seem to emerge from the mirrors themselves, rather than from the external world they ostensibly reflect. As she passes one of the great chambers where the women sleep, she pauses beside a window that looks out onto a moonlit garden. The silver surfaces catch the pale lunar illumination and transform it into something entirely new, something that seems to contain not just light but memory, not just present illumination, but the accumulated radiance of countless nights when moonlight has fallen through this same window, has touched these same mirrors, has created moments of beauty too subtle and too ephemeral for daylight consciousness to perceive or remember. In this moonlit moment, the mirrors begin to show her images that she has never seen before, faces that belong to no one she has ever encountered in her journeys through the harem's corridors. These are faces of extraordinary beauty, features that seem to represent not individual women, but the essential qualities of femininity itself, the archetypal forms that exist behind and within all particular manifestations of female beauty. One face appears in the left mirror, features of such perfect symmetry and grace that they seem to have been carved from moonlight itself, eyes that hold depths of wisdom and compassion that speak of ages of accumulated understanding, lips that curve in expressions of such profound peace that looking upon them brings immediate calm to her own spirit. This face does not belong to any specific time or place, but seems to exist in the eternal realm, where all true beauty finds its source and inspiration. Another face appears in the right mirror, equally beautiful but expressing different qualities. The wild freedom of mountain streams, the untamed grace of creatures that have never known captivity, the fierce joy of existence lived according to principles that recognize no authority except the deep laws of natural harmony. This face speaks of beauty that cannot be domesticated, cannot be contained within any human institution, no matter how refined or as she stands transfixed by these extraordinary visions, she becomes aware that she is not alone in the corridor, but the presence she senses is not that of another person. It is something else entirely, something that belongs to the realm of spirits, of essences that exist beyond the boundaries of physical incarnation. This presence does not threaten, but rather seems to watch with interest and approval, as if her capacity to see these archetypal faces in the mirrors has earned her entry into a more exclusive circle, a more intimate relationship with the forces that govern beauty and its manifestation in the world. The presence makes itself known not through any visible appearance, but through subtle changes in the atmosphere around her, through a gentle warming of the air, through barely perceptible shifts in the patterns of shadow and light that suggest intelligence, intention, benevolent attention focused upon her and her work with the mirrors. She understands without being told that this presence is that of someone who once served beauty as she now serves it, someone whose dedication was so complete, so perfectly aligned with eternal principles, that death itself could not end the service, but only transform it into a different kind of participation in the ongoing creation and maintenance of loveliness. Under the influence of this spiritual presence, the mirrors in her hands undergo another transformation. Their surfaces become not just windows into archetypal realms, but screens upon which the history of beauty itself begins to unfold, showing her images from times and places far removed from the Ottoman harem where she now stands. She sees ancient temples where other women tended other mirrors, where the service of beauty took different forms but expressed the same essential dedication. the same understanding that such service connects human effort to cosmic purpose. She sees Egyptian priestesses polishing bronze mirrors that caught the desert sun and threw it back in patterns that guided religious ceremonies, that facilitated communion between earthly beauty and divine radiance. She sees Greek maidens tending pools of still water that served as mirrors in temple courtyards, their reflections creating connections between human loveliness and the archetypal beauties celebrated in myth and poetry. She sees Chinese courtesans with mirrors of polished jade, their green surfaces reflecting not just physical appearance, but the harmony between human grace and natural principles. All of these images flow through the silver surfaces she holds, creating a kind of visual history of the service she performs, showing her that her quiet work in the Ottoman harem is part of a tradition that extends back to the very beginnings of human civilization, that connects her to countless others who have found in the maintenance of beauty a path toward transcendence, toward participation in purposes larger than individual existence. But more than historical images, the mirrors begin to show her glimpses of the future, suggestions of how the service of beauty will continue to evolve and manifest in times yet to come. She sees women in settings she cannot understand, using technologies that seem magical to her limited perspective, but still engaged in the same essential work, the cultivation and enhancement of beauty as a daily practice, as a way of maintaining connection between human consciousness and the eternal principles that govern authentic harmony and grace. These visions of past and future create in her a profound sense of continuity, of belonging to something that transcends the boundaries of individual life and connects her to purposes that extend far beyond her personal existence. She understands that her work with mirrors is not just temporal employment, but eternal calling. Not just practical service, but spiritual vocation that will continue in some form, regardless of the particular circumstances in which it manifests. As these revelations unfold in the mirrors she holds, she becomes aware of changes in her own reflection. When she glimpses herself in the silver surfaces, she sees not just her current appearance, but something more. An accumulation of all the beauty she has served, all the loveliness she has facilitated through her work with mirrors. Her own features seem to glow, with accumulated grace, seem to embody the principle she has spent her life serving. But more than personal transformation, she begins to see in her reflection the faces of all the women she has encountered in her journeys through the harem, all the expressions she has witnessed and carried in the mirrors. Her individual identity seems to expand to include theirs, creating a composite image that represents not just personal beauty, but collective feminine grace, the accumulated loveliness of the entire community she serves. This expansion of identity brings with it no sense of losing herself, but rather of finding her true self, of discovering that her individual existence gains meaning and depth precisely through its integration with larger purposes, larger communities, larger patterns of beauty and service. She sees that her apparent isolation, her silent movement through corridors, where she is rarely acknowledged directly, is actually a form of intimate connection. a way of participating so completely in the life of the harem that her individual boundaries become permeable, allowing her to serve as a conduit for beauty rather than merely an observer of it. In the deepest hour of the night, when even the minimal flames of the corridor lamps seem to burn lower, when the very air seems to thicken with accumulated silence and peace, she experiences the most extraordinary vision of all. The mirrors in her hand seem to dissolve, their physical boundaries becoming permeable, allowing their reflective surfaces to merge and expand until she finds herself standing in what appears to be an infinite hall of mirrors, a space where every surface reflects and is reflected by every other surface in patterns of such complexity that they seem to approach the mathematical structures that govern reality itself. In this infinite hall, she sees not just her own reflection, but the reflections of all beings who have ever served beauty, all consciousness that has ever dedicated itself to the cultivation and maintenance of loveliness as a spiritual practice. These reflections create patterns that shift and flow like visual music, like geometry made liquid, like the fundamental harmonies of creation made visible through the medium of perfect reflection. She understands that she has entered a realm that exists beyond ordinary space and time, a dimension where all service to beauty converges, where the accumulated devotion of countless individuals creates a kind of spiritual architecture, a cosmic temple dedicated to the eternal principles that govern authentic harmony and grace. In this temple, she is both individual worshipper and integrated part of the worship itself, both separate consciousness and facet of the larger diamond of awareness that comprises all authentic service to beauty. The experience is so profound, so complete in its revelation of the true nature of her calling, that she feels as if she might dissolve entirely into the infinite patterns of reflection, might lose all sense of individual existence in the overwhelming beauty of perfect integration with cosmic purpose. But even as this dissolution seems imminent, she feels the gentle presence she has sensed throughout the night reaching out to her, offering guidance and protection, ensuring that she retains enough individual identity to continue her earthly service, while still carrying within herself the memory of this ultimate vision. Gradually, the infinite hall of mirrors begins to contract, its endless surfaces slowly resolving back into the familiar shapes of the two hand mirrors she carries, their silver surfaces now glowing with accumulated wisdom, accumulated understanding of their true nature and purpose. She finds herself once again in the corridor of the harem, surrounded by the familiar architecture of stone and silk, but transformed by her experience, carrying within herself a direct knowledge of the cosmic significance of even the smallest acts of service to beauty. The spiritual presence that has guided her through this night of revelation makes itself known one final time through a gentle warming of the air around her, a subtle shift in the patterns of shadow and light that speaks of blessing, of approval, of welcome into a more intimate understanding of the work she performs. She understands that this presence will always be available to her, that her experience this night has created a permanent connection to the realm of spirit, who continue their service to beauty beyond the boundaries of physical incarnation. As the night begins its slow transition toward dawn, as the first, almost imperceptible lightening of darkness suggests the approaching return of day, she continues her movement through the corridors with a new sense of purpose, a deeper appreciation for the sacred nature of her calling. The mirrors in her hands feel different now, not just tools, but sacred objects, not just reflective surfaces, but instruments of spiritual communion, bridges between the visible world and the invisible beauties that give meaning and direction to all authentic human effort. The faces that begin to appear in the mirrors as she encounters the first early risers. The women who wake before dawn to begin their prayers and meditations seem somehow enhanced by the night's revelations. These faces appear in the silver surfaces not just as individual beauties, but as manifestations of the archetypal forms she has witnessed, as temporary expressions of eternal principles, as flowers blooming from the infinite garden of beauty that encompasses and defines all authentic existence. She realizes that her capacity to see has been permanently altered by the night's experiences, that she will never again look into mirrors and see only surface reflections. From now on, every mirror will be a window into deeper dimensions. Every reflection will carry suggestions of the infinite patterns that connect individual beauty to cosmic harmony. Every moment of service will be consciously understood as participation in purposes that extend far beyond immediate practical necessity. But this enhanced vision brings with it not burden but liberation, not complexity but simplification. She understands now that all the various aspects of her work, the daily journeys through corridors, the careful collection of faces and expressions, the ritual cleansing in the mirror bath, these solitary hours when she believes herself unobserved, all of these are facets of a single practice, a unified service that connects her to the deepest meanings of existence itself. As dawn approaches and the night of revelation draws toward its close, she moves through the final corridors of her route with profound gratitude for what has been revealed to her, for the understanding that has been granted, for the permanent transformation that has occurred in her relationship to her work and to herself. The mirrors she carries glow with accumulated wisdom, their surfaces holding not just the memory of the night's visions, but the living presence of the principles those visions revealed. She approaches the chamber where she will rest and prepare for the day's work with a deep satisfaction that comes from having touched the ultimate meanings of service, from having experienced direct communion with the forces that govern beauty and its manifestation in the world. The night has shown her that her quiet work connects her to purposes of cosmic significance, that her individual service participates in the ongoing creation and maintenance of harmony throughout the universe. The mirrors settle into their resting places with what seems like sighs of completion, their surfaces reflecting the first pale hints of approaching dawn with extraordinary clarity and depth. They have served as vehicles for revelation, as instruments through which she has been granted access to dimensions normally hidden from human perception. Now they rest, integrating the wisdom they have conveyed, preparing to carry forward into the day's work the enhanced understanding that the night has brought. In the growing light of dawn, she prepares herself for sleep with movements that have been transformed into prayer, gestures that now consciously acknowledge the sacred nature of her existence, the blessing of her calling, the profound privilege of serving purposes that connect individual effort to cosmic intention. The night has revealed to her the true nature of beauty, not as surface decoration, but as spiritual principle, not as human creation, but as divine manifestation, expressing itself through human dedication and service. As she settles into her cushions and allows the deep peace of approaching sleep to enfold her, she carries with her the memory of infinite mirrors reflecting infinite beauty. The understanding that her individual service is part of a cosmic symphony. The knowledge that even in the deepest hours of night, when she believes herself alone and unobserved, she is held within a network of spiritual presence and support that extends throughout all dimensions of existence. The dawn light grows stronger, painting the walls of her chamber with gentle gold, creating patterns that seem to echo the infinite reflections she has witnessed in the night. In this blessed light, she finds her rest, her individual consciousness merging with the larger peace that encompasses all authentic service, all genuine dedication to the cultivation of beauty as a daily practice, as a pathway toward transcendence, as a form of worship that requires no words, no formal ceremony, but only the quiet faithfulness of hands that polish mirrors, and eyes that see truly, and hearts that serve without question or reservation. She glows with accumulated revelation, and she sleeps. The final evening descends upon the harem with a quality of light that seems different from all the evenings that have preceded it. A golden radiance that carries within itself suggestions of completion, of cycles drawing toward their natural conclusions, of purposes fulfilled and service rendered complete. She wakes from her day's rest with an intuitive understanding that this evening will mark not an end but a transformation, a movement from one form of service to another, from one level of understanding to a deeper integration with the principles that have guided her work with mirrors throughout her time within these blessed walls. The mirrors that wait for her in their resting places seem to glow with accumulated wisdom, their silver surfaces reflecting not just the evening light that filters through the windows, but something deeper, the essence of all the beauty they have witnessed, all the faces they have captured, all the moments of grace they have facilitated through their faithful service. As she approaches them, she feels a profound sense of gratitude for their companionship, for the way they have served as bridges between her individual consciousness and the larger patterns of beauty that define existence within the harem. Tonight, her final journey will take her through all the corridors she has walked before, but with the understanding that she carries within herself the accumulated wisdom of all her previous passages, all her encounters with beauty, all her moments of revelation and recognition. The mirrors she lifts feel different in her hands, not heavier but more substantial, as if they have absorbed not just light but meaning, not just reflections, but the essential truths that those reflections represent. The corridors through which she begins her final passage seem transformed by the approaching completion of her service. The familiar architecture takes on qualities of the eternal, as if the stone and silk, the marble and wood, have been revealed in their true nature as temporary expressions of permanent principles, as physical manifestations of the spiritual harmonies that govern all authentic beauty. The lamps that light her way burn with unusual clarity, their flames seeming to pulse with awareness of the significance of this final evening. As she walks, the mirrors begin to release the accumulated images they have carried throughout her service. Faces appearing and fading in the silver depths, like memories becoming visible. Expressions that represent not just individual moments, but the essence of all the beauty she has witnessed and facilitated. The woman at the window reappears, her contemplative gaze now seeming to encompass not just the garden beyond, but all the gardens of possibility that exist within every moment of authentic seeing. The musician manifests again, her fingers moving across strings that create not just audible melodies, but visual harmonies that dance across the mirror surfaces in patterns of infinite complexity. All the faces she has encountered blend and separate, creating composite images that represent the full spectrum of feminine beauty. The complete range of grace and loveliness that can flourish within a world dedicated to the cultivation of aesthetic principles as guides for daily life. These faces speak to her now not as individual encounters, but as facets of a single, multiform beauty, as expressions of the divine feminine principle that finds its manifestation through countless particular forms, but remains essentially one, essentially eternal, essentially perfect in its infinite variety. The corridors themselves seem to participate in this final revelation, their walls becoming transparent to show her all the beauty that has ever existed within these spaces. All the women who have walked these passages throughout the generations. All the moments of grace and loveliness that have accumulated like layers of invisible sediment, creating an atmosphere so rich with beauty that it seems almost tangible, almost visible to ordinary perception. In the chamber of infinite mirrors, she pauses for what she knows will be the final time, and the great reflecting surfaces seem to awaken to her presence with unusual intensity. The reflections that appear are not just of her current moment, but of all her moments within this chamber. All her encounters with the mystery of infinite reflection, all her glimpses into the cosmic architecture that underlies apparent reality. She sees herself as she was when she first began her service, uncertain and still learning the deeper meanings of her work. She sees herself as she became through years of faithful attention, growing into understanding and integration with her calling. And she sees herself as she might yet become, should she choose to continue her service in other forms, other dimensions of existence. But more than personal history, the mirrors show her the history of all service to beauty, all the hands that have polished reflecting surfaces, all the eyes that have looked into silver depths, seeking truth and finding it. All the hearts that have dedicated themselves to the maintenance and enhancement of loveliness as a spiritual practice. She understands that she has been part of something far greater than individual effort, part of a tradition that extends throughout human history and into dimensions of existence beyond human comprehension. As she stands surrounded by infinite reflections, she feels a presence approaching, not the spiritual guide who has accompanied her through her night of revelation, but something else, someone else, whose approach creates changes in the very air around her, whose coming seems to transform the quality of light, of space, of reality itself. The mirrors around her begin to show not just reflections, but something approaching direct vision. Images that seem to exist independently of physical light and reflection, that emerge from the silver surfaces like windows opening onto other worlds. In these visions, she sees a figure approaching through corridors that exist in dimensions parallel to, but not identical with, the physical harem where she stands. This figure moves with grace that seems to encompass all the grace she has witnessed during her service. Beauty that represents the synthesis of all the individual beauties she has encountered. Presence that radiates the accumulated wisdom of all authentic dedication to aesthetic principles. As the figure draws closer, she begins to understand that she is witnessing her own highest potential, the form she might take should she choose to continue her service beyond the boundaries of physical existence. The figure enters the chamber of mirrors, and suddenly the infinite reflections begin to show not just parallel images, but integrated ones. Reflections that combine her current existence with her potential transformation, her individual service with her possible integration into the larger patterns of cosmic beauty. She sees that choice is being offered to her the choice to continue her service in its current form, or to accept transformation into a different kind of existence, a different level of participation in the ongoing creation and maintenance of beauty throughout the universe. The choice requires no deliberation, for she understands that it is not really a choice between alternatives, but recognition of what has already been decided through years of faithful service, through the gradual transformation that has been occurring throughout her work with mirrors, through the accumulated understanding that has grown within her like slowly ripening fruit finally ready for harvest. Her individual existence has been slowly dissolving into something larger, something that encompasses individual identity without destroying it, that preserves personal consciousness while integrating it into cosmic purpose. As this recognition unfolds within her, the mirrors in her hands begin their own transformation. Their silver surfaces seem to liquefy, becoming pools of liquid light that flow upward from her palms, creating spirals of luminous energy that rise toward the vaulted ceiling of the chamber and beyond, creating connections between the intimate space of the mirror chamber and the infinite dimensions that surround and contain it. The mirrors are returning to their essential nature, releasing their accumulated service, their stored beauty, their collected wisdom into the larger patterns of which they have always been part. But even as the mirrors dissolve into light, even as their physical forms return to the cosmic energies from which they emerged, they leave behind something permanent, something that will continue to exist within the harem long after their physical presence has ended. The beauty they have facilitated, the connections they have created, the understanding they have, conveyed. All of this becomes integrated into the very architecture of the place, into the spiritual atmosphere that will continue to nurture and inspire all who dwell within these walls. She feels herself beginning to undergo the same transformation, her individual boundaries becoming permeable, her personal identity expanding.